Hi, my name is Sol and welcome to my channel. We are about halfway through summer and today I wanted to share some of what I've been reading and watching this summer so far. Summertime is when I typically do the bulk of my reading for the year because I'm usually off of work, so I just have some extra time to read. I don't follow any particular TBR or theme, so these books are just kind of all over the place and I picked them up as the mood struck me. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with what I read this summer. The first book I want to share is a lighthearted, cutesy romance, The Romance Rivalry by Susan Lee. This is a young adult / new adult contemporary fiction. It centers around the female main character, Irene, who is starting off her college freshman year, and she just also happens to be a very well-known book reviewer on Book Talk. While in college, she runs into her online rival, Aiden, who is also a very famous up-and-coming book reviewer. The two end up getting into this romance trope competition and they end up doing a fake dating situation, and as you can imagine, those fake feelings end up developing into real feelings. This was a really great read for the summer. It was really cute and lighthearted. One thing about it is that it is filled with a lot of contemporary social media references and internet slang, so to speak, so I am curious how it would hold up over time, but for now it was a fun read. The next book that I wanted to share is The Witch's Pet by Carrie Andrews. This is a story that centers around the female main character, Pandora, who is from a kingdom that is behind a wall and separates her and her people from the rest of the world. Her kingdom has been experiencing some troubles, and so her father decides to arrange a marriage between Pandora and this mysterious Prince Citri from outside the wall. Both Prince Citri and Pandora are reluctant to be a part of this marriage, but they agree anyway, and he ends up whisking her away to his castle. Pandora spends a good portion of the story locked up in her chambers, with Prince Citri going off and doing some mysterious work. The magic system is interesting in that it involves potions and brews, and the prince kind of reminds me of Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. I found parts of the story predictable, and I wish that the author had spent more time on the descriptions of the world and more interactions between Pandora and some other supporting characters. I feel like a good portion of the story just took place in the bedchambers, and I would have liked to gone further and explore more. Maybe it'll happen in future books, I'm not sure. But this was a fun read to pass the time. I'm not sure that I'll check out the sequel. It's still to be determined. The next book is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This has been one of my favorite reads so far and is a historical fiction set in 1950s Iran. The story is about two young teenagers, Roya and Baman. They secretly meet at this small stationery shop in Tehran, and soon feelings begin to develop between the two of them. Unfortunately, due to some political conflicts, Roya and Baman end up separated. Roya ends up going to the United States and Baman stays behind in Iran. This was a beautiful story filled with love, self-discovery, history, and I just ended up in tears by the end of the book. And although the ending was not what I hoped it would be, it did still end on a somewhat hopeful note for me. The next book is The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and this is another romantasy that I have really enjoyed. The story is about Six, who is a diviner at Aisling Cathedral. She and this other group of diviners, who were formerly sick children or orphans, have been rescued by this abbess, and in exchange for divining, they are given this home where they're provided for, and after 10 years of service, they are free to go back into the world. On a particular occasion, the new young king comes to the cathedral to have his future foretold, and not soon after, Six's fellow diviners and friends begin to go missing. She decides to enlist the help of Rory, a knight for the new young king, and they soon set off to try and find out what has happened to the other diviners. This book has a really cool gothic atmosphere with a slow burn romance, some adventure, and a really funny gargoyle sidekick. I think that by the end of the book, some of these kind of trials that they're undergoing get repetitive, and I think the story could have benefited from cutting down on some of those trials that they had to go through. This is the first book in a series, I believe, so we'll see how the story develops. But overall, it was a really good read for me, and I am excited for the sequel. The next book is another one of my favorite reads this year so far, and that is A Ministry of Time by Kaylee Ann Bradley. This book is about a British civil servant who is recruited into the Ministry of Time. The Ministry of Time is going back in time to pull out people from their timelines and bring them to the present. Our main character, whose name we never learn, doesn't really know the purpose of this project, but just kind of goes along with it. There's a lot happening in this book. There is history, time travel, romance, mystery, action, adventure, you name it. I have seen some online criticisms about this book saying that it was heavily inspired by a Spanish show also called The Ministry of Time, in Spanish El Ministerio del Tiempo. I was curious, so I did start watching a few episodes. However, aside from the time travel aspect and the same Ministry of Time title and kind of organization, I didn't notice too many other similarities. Maybe if I continue to watch the show, I might find some other similar aspects between the book and the show. I did really enjoy this book because I haven't really read much like it. I am curious into delving more into sci-fi, so we'll see if any more books come up in the future for me. We are coming up on the last couple of books that I have read so far. My second to last book was A Bargain So Bloody by Vasilisa Drake. This is another fantasy romance, and it starts off with the female main character, Samara, who is trapped in a magical prison for several years. There is finally an opportunity for her to escape, but she needs to enlist the help of one of the other prisoners, who just happens to be a vampire. This vampire is named Raphael, and Samara and Raphael take off together. Raphael is intrigued by Samara, and although Samara has plans to travel off on her own, Raphael finds that he can't quite let go of her and ends up bringing her with him to his kingdom. While there, Samara learns a lot more about Raphael's vampire world and begins to build her skills to better defend herself and protect herself from the dangers that might await her. This was a classic romantasy. Some of the plot was a bit predictable, but I still had a fun time reading it. I don't know if I'll read the sequel to this one, but if you are just looking for a romantasy read to pass the time that has some vampires, this might be a good book to check out. Now, my last read of the summer has been my most anticipated and my most heartbreaking, and that was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. Problematic Summer Romance is a sequel to Ali Hazelwood's Not in Love. Not in Love centers around Eli and Rue, and Problematic Summer Romance centers around Eli's younger sister, Maya, who is desperately in love with Eli's friend, Connor, who happens to be 15 years older than her. There's a lot of chatter about the age gap romance in this book before it came out, but both Maya and Connor are consenting adults, and I don't think there was too much of an issue with that age gap, but Connor really seems to think there is some issues with the age gap between him and Maya, and he does not let us forget it. Every other page, it felt like Connor was bringing up the age gap between him and Maya was just telling him that she would love him regardless, and I just wanted to bash my head against the wall because it felt like the story didn't really move along. I wanted a fun, flirty romance book, and it was just kind of constant agony for me. It was not what I expected it to be, and I just did not enjoy it. I really wanted to DNF it about halfway through, but I persevered. I am still going to read whatever Ali Hazelwood writes in the future, but this one just really is probably one of my least favorite books by her so far, and I'm really heartbroken by that, but it's okay. We move on. Now on to what I've been watching this summer. Honestly, I haven't been watching a lot because I feel like the streaming platforms haven't really released anything that I've been super interested in. Everything that I've been watching is a continuation of series that I started before. The first one is The Gilded Age. The Gilded Age is created by Julian Fellows, who also created Downton Abbey. I love Downton Abbey. I've seen all the episodes and all the movies, and I believe the last one's coming out in November. While Downton Abbey takes place in England, The Gilded Age takes place in the United States during the era of economic growth and industrialization that was happening like 1870s to, I believe, the early 1900s. The main characters are based off of historical figures like the Vanderbilts, who were coming into large wealth at the time. This new season is following the relationship of the children of some of the older characters and some marriages and marriage propositions that are happening. I'm just having a great time watching this show. It did just get approved for a 4th season, so I'm really excited about that too. The other show that I've been watching is The Summer I Turned Pretty, and it's based off the books by Jenny Han. I have not read the books because they are young adult and I just didn't have an interest in that kind of story anymore, but I was feeling bored. I decided to start the series when it was first released, and I've kept up with it since. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of the characters. I'm over the back and forth between Conrad and Jeremiah, and I don't know, these characters feel very immature to me, but I guess that's kind of the point. They're kind of young. And I already know how the books end. I don't know if the show is going to follow the same ending. So I'm just kind of waiting for that conclusion to happen. But it gives me something to watch in the middle of the week, and I love the drama between the characters. So that's what keeps me going. Okay, so that about wraps up what I've been reading and watching this summer. I have a couple of weeks of summer break left, so I'm going to try and squeeze in a few more reads before I have to go back to work and lose all of my free reading time. I have a few books that I've recently purchased that I'm hoping to get through. And as far as watching, I'm probably just going to continue with The Gilded Age and The Summer I Turned Pretty. I think there is a movie or two that's coming out on Netflix. I think one of them is The Oxford Year or My Oxford Year that I am curious about. And other than that, I'm probably just going to be rewatching Downton Abbey until the new episode of Gilded Age drops. I hope all of you have been having a great summer. Let me know in the comments, what have you been reading and watching this summer? What are some of your favorites and what have been some of your not so favorites? Until next time.